Welcome to the Pursue podcast, where we today have the honor of having Duke alum Markus Fjørtoft with us. Markus went on to be drafted to Seattle Sounders in 2018. He later went on to play professionally in New Zealand and signed for Hamilton in the top Scottish league. He's now currently playing for Green Rock Morton. Welcome to the podcast, Markus.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to join you guys for hopefully a lovely chat about college.
It's about college, but also about all the other things you've been doing. Because it's been in prepping for this and talking to you, it's been you have quite a journey, and we love to talk about journeys on this podcast. Yeah. But if it wasn't for the college part, none of the other stuff would have been would have happened, which is music to our ears.
No, exactly. Listen, I owe a whole lot to my college experience. I owe a lot to a handful of people who made it possible. I'm not going to make this sound like a Oscar thank you speech, but it's been amazing. It was an amazing 4 years for me, and it really laid the groundwork for how I was able to pursue a career post college.
Yeah, and we're talking Duke here. Duke is a very well-known school across the world, super high-end academic. It's in North Carolina, very famous for their sports programs too. You have the basketball, probably one of the most famous, and maybe the rivalry with the University of North Carolina, Michael Jordan territory, all of this stuff. We'll go more into that later, but let's rewind to 2013, when I guess your maybe idea of college started brewing at this point. You were playing for Bærum, just outside of Oslo, and you were part of a group, the 1994 group in Bærum. That is quite well-known. It's like not the class of 93 for Man United, but it's a very there's a lot of good players that have come out in that year in Bærum. How was it to be part of that team?
Listen, and I've looked back on this, and it's become more evidently clear for me looking back how special that group was, because as you know, and what's constantly harped on in football as well is the fact that, listen, not a lot of people are going to make it, and we can go on what defines making it later on. But if you look at that group, there are 5-6 players that went on to, and I deem going to college, gaining an education. I have one of the friends who's at University of North Florida has got his MBA from there. That is perhaps the biggest success story of them all. So it's pretty special to see how far we were able to take football. And when I look back at it, and I've had discussions with this because I'm kind of in a project trying to make somewhat of a podcast about why the group of us were able to make so much out of football. And listen, Bærum is a great place for youth development. At the time, we were one of the better teams in the country. We had incredible coaches, but also more importantly is that the inner drive and the inspiration we were able to give one another throughout the whole thing, I think, was incredibly important. If you're surrounded by like-minded, driven, motivated individuals, then that ultimately have an effect on you. And I think that was just a great mix of people in which we're able to really push one another in a very conducive environment where we could develop. So listen, it's incredible to look back at it, and having discussed it with them over the last few months, I think it becomes pretty clear that there was something really, really special we had going on.
Yeah, because you mentioned there one of your friends, Simon Solstad. We helped him to University of North Florida, and I remember, and there were several other players that went on to college from there and have done well in college, and academically successful, with their football or soccer successful, and many players that also ended up just going straight to the professional ranks from that team. But I remember back in 2013. where me and Stu, this was early days, we went out, we brought a couple of coaches with us because they were recruiting some of our players, and you were playing in the game, and Simon Solstad was playing in the game, and I think Chris Wingate was playing in the game. He ended up at the University of New Hampshire. But they were, and your dad, and he's a very famous guy in Norway. He's done very well with the soccer, and he was, I remember Stu, in prepping for this episode, he was walking around being very social, talking to everybody and speaking to the coaches, but in that game, I think a lot of scholarship deals happened because of that game, at least for some of these guys. Maybe not for you because you went a year later, but was that an inspiration for you that some of your friends decided to go? Did they push you or inspire you to do the same, or was your mind set at doing this before they had signed their scholarship agreements?
I think my mind was set on it, but it certainly helps you be inspired when you see your friends leaving the year before you are, because I had decided that I did not want to go the year after high school because I simply didn't feel I was ready. And so to see them be part of that process, and I was constantly inquiring, how's this and how's that, and wondering how it was. And it's exciting, the thrill of being recruited, of being offered a potential scholarship is really cool. And so to see them go on to do what they did, obviously inspired me. But my mind was pretty set because I asked myself, listen, what do I want to make out of football? Because I love football, soccer for that sake. I love soccer. And so I said, what do I want to make out of it? And I asked myself, okay, if I'm making in Norway, best case scenario, and this is for me, this is my personal preference. I just want to I said, if I'm making in Norway, what's the best case scenario? Okay, maybe I can play for Lillestrøm, which is my favorite club in Norway. Oh, I could play there, career, okay. But I wasn't necessarily that excited about the idea. And I was going through the ranks at Bærum and stuff like that, and it was really cool, taking the ranks and going from U16 to under 19 to then the first team. But I said, okay, through word of mouth, I had friends. I had Emil Ekblom who went to Syracuse, saw what he was doing. He'd gone a couple of years before, and I saw what he did. And so through word of mouth and seeing what the possibilities were there in America, I thought, wow, you can combine an education, you can perform at a high level. The facilities are incredible, and it's obviously a very social experience too. I said, to integrate those three aspects in a college environment, I said, that sounds incredible. And so that's what I really want to do. I wanted to combine education and soccer, and what better place to do that than in America?
And that's and those are the three things that, generally speaking, why people want to do this. And of course, speaking to you and others, former student athletes in this podcast, is to show more what is it like to be a student athlete, and not just like the scholarship, the sport, and the education, but it's to go a bit deeper into it. But and many, you talk about not being ready yet, and it is a big step to decide, okay, I'm moving away from my family, going over to the States. It's far away. Regardless where you're from in the world, it's the same thing. And I think also for Americans, you probably played with some California natives, right? And they traveled all the way across the country, 5-hour flight to North Carolina to play at Duke. So to be ready for it is important. And it might take some time to mature and just really be ready. And so you ended up doing a year at a BI here in Oslo, a very good business school. And looking at the requirements to get into a school like Duke, to add that to your academic CV, and doing well from a school like that probably helped you in that process, is my guess.
Yeah. No, listen, it's hard to set yourself apart at Duke. And I volunteer now for the Duke admissions, in which I interview prospective students. So they have all their applications sent in, but they offer an interview with the potential applicants in order for them to gather a more personable perspective of the client. And I talk to these students, and I am so impressed. And sometimes I think to myself, how did I get into this school, right? And obviously, being an athlete helps, and having good grades, there's a mix there that offers something that is different from these other students. But I talk to these potential applicants, and they're such impressive individuals in terms of what they do, both at school, but also in extracurricular activities. So it was tough, but it's a way to set yourself apart. I went to business school and I had a certain idea. And listen, there are many ways intelligence comes by, but obviously I had to have my grades in order. I remember going to Duke and having my admissions interview there, and him going through my grades, and I was pretty happy with my transcript and grades. And there was one grade of 4 in German, and that's the one thing we discussed. He said, "So what happened in German here?" I said, "Jesus Christ!" And so I
should have paid more attention to the German lessons. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the standard that was being kind of benchmarked. But
because a letter grade 4 is a B, right? Yeah. And you can convert that to the US system, that is a B, which that is not a bad grade, but they would ideally want you to get an A there.
Exactly.
But that's interesting. So then of course you've gone through the process of applying to a top academic school in the world. If you look at all the rankings, they're up there. But then now you're also seeing what it takes to actually get in, and what admissions look at. And we get a lot of questions about that from, say, parents that are wondering, hey, my son, daughter, they're doing well in school, but how well do they need to do to be considered for a top school? But what do you have more for those that have this question? Can you shed a little bit more light on what the admissions at a top school like Duke will look at?
Absolutely. Now that I'm a self-designated admissions expert, I'll go into it a bit. But especially now over the last year, it's been, I don't know how much they put weight on the personal aspect, but I think it's an important factor, because they will have, when people apply to, say, a school like Duke, everyone will be academically brilliant. That's a given. Like that's almost what they expect. So then it's in terms of, okay, what have they done on the side? What type of person are they? Are they driven? And especially now over the last years, how have they dealt with hardship? How have they dealt with COVID? And how has that hindered them, or has that allowed them to relish with an environment of hardship and said, okay, you know what? Despite that, I'm finishing, pulling through on my projects, or I'm doing extra stuff. And that's really what they wanted to know. They wanted to know the story in terms of how they react to adversity, and then obviously what they can provide to the school, as opposed to, okay, we know that Duke will provide you with this, and they have excellent resources and etc. But what can you bring as an individual to our school? And the answers there are pretty interesting in terms of, in such a high performance environment. I think it requires a high degree of introspection to know what you provide as an individual to such an esteemed institution as Duke is. So just being authentic, I think helps, because a lot of people will often maybe think that if they set up this front, that will help them. But I think, if you're gonna fail as yourself in a way as well.
Yeah, it's. Luckily I didn't have to go through such a rigid application process. And Truls, when you started, you also took a gap year, right? And you were quite late out of the gates. We spoke about this before in previous episode, but where you came in maybe end of March, and you wanted to go in 5 months. There was no big process. It would have been too late if you wanted to go to a school like Duke to start then. You need time for this process. The admissions process will take longer, much more requirements. But maybe there's many ways to Rome. If Rome is the US, there's a lot of different ways there.
But obviously, I think the difference here is that Markus comes from an environment where, former players at the club have went on to do well in college, and there's sunshine stories from that, right? That Markus have heard about, and a lot of his teammates are doing it and stuff like that. But for me, and I think for others as well, it wasn't a big thing. The only one that I knew of was Marius Krate that went on to play, and he was 4 or 5 years older than me. But I think that's sort of the difference as well. Because if I had sort of known about it or had former teammates or friends that had done it, I think I would start it earlier. But I just figured it out working late night shift at Santander at Lysaker and decided, yeah, I want to travel in 5 months. Kim, get on it, and then
Yeah,
and then I
pretty
went
much.
up. Yeah,
But it also it works out, right?
yeah,
But,
it works out definitely.
But it's you're finishing up your studies at BI here in Oslo, getting your courses and working hard on your grades, right? They want to see that, and you were recruited, but you had a special contact that helped you with landing a school like Duke. It's like, well, if you want to go to college, why not try Duke or another top academic school? But how did that come about, that you actually got this opportunity to come to Duke?
Well, listen, my dad and I had a conversation, and we thought, you know what, let's try and use our network to try and see what possibilities are out there. And perhaps a bit naively looking back at it, because of what the college application process and finding schools to begin with, what that entails, because it's a pretty tedious process, practically, logistically, the whole lot. But my father had played with a man named Robbie Musto at Millsborough, who had been involved in the college system. I think he was at Boston University within the coaching staff there. And him and I had a conversation. This was just the preliminary phases. And he asked me, listen, what do you want from your college experience? I said, well, I would preferably like to stay at the East Coast because it's closer to home. It's just it's his time zone. Everything is just, it doesn't really matter because it's a limit. You can only go home for the winter or the Christmas holidays and summer anyway. But at the time, that was important for me. I said I want to have a good education, but I also want to have a good soccer environment too. I want it to be at a good level. And obviously there are, so oftentimes it will be one or the other, or maybe there are both, but not as high of a level, etc. But he said, listen, why don't we just start at the top? He said, I'll reach out to these people and see. And then he made a list, and the list included, he said, okay, go Harvard, we'll go Duke, we'll go UNC, we'll go University of Virginia, we'll go Wake Forest. I said, I've barely heard of these schools almost. I'm so new to the whole process. Heard about UNC, Michael Jordan. Duke is just there in the back of the mind. I've heard it somewhere. And he said, listen, let's just start the process. Let's go down the list. We reached out, blah, blah. Okay. Oh, okay. They came back. Oh, they say, oh, you have to come for a training camp, blah, blah, blah. Oh, they don't offer scholarship. Okay. That's them off the list. Okay. They didn't respond. And then as it turned out, I got, I think UNC, Wake Forest, and Duke came back, and then UNC kind of fiddled away, and then I ended up going on a visit, and then I went to Duke, and I went to Wake Forest, but then it only turned out that then really the only one with substantial interest was Duke, and then followed a very stressful process of trying to visiting, getting all the paperwork done, and then ultimately, because I was late to the process, you said that you decided in March. I decided at the end of the year, but in terms of, I'm so amazed by how early they recruit. So I was by far the last one. So in terms of, the scholarship budget and whether I came in academically. And so ultimately I put all my eggs in one basket when it came to it all. And it was kind of stressful, but thankfully it worked out.
Yeah, amazing. And in all of that, you had to explain your German letter grade B. That's...
and I went into that interview and I didn't either say, oh, you're just going to have a chat. And I didn't know what's an admissions interview. Like, I'm so new to this. And so I came in there, I said, okay. But if I'd known at the moment, I would have been so nervous. But at the time, it was this, and Duke has this very Gothic architecture. It's a very historic, these historic buildings. And I come into this like very grand office, and he's sitting across from me and asking me these questions. What's your favorite time of history to have lived in? And I said, oh, I think Italy during the Renaissance would be pretty cool. Like, I'm just answering that like any other normal conversation. And then afterwards, like, yeah, that was your college admissions interview. I said, oh my God. But thankfully enough, it worked out all right.
It's probably a very clever tactic by the coaching staff to not put too much emphasis on how important that was.
Maybe, yeah.
Exciting. And to get the chance to visit as well is a nice thing. Not everybody will do that, but I think that is a very clever thing to do, if possible, to see what you're getting yourself into. And I mean, the Duke campus, when you get on there and you see what it's like, it's hard not to want to attend that school as well. It helps them in their recruiting.
It's a beautiful school, and everything's so consistent in terms of the style, and they've put so much resources into it. At the day, it was a very rainy day at Duke, and I went to Duke and I went to Wake Forest, and on a first impression, I thought Wake Forest's campus was nicer because of, I don't know, it was a sunny day versus Duke. It was rainy and stuff like that. But when I went to school, and I compared everything else, Duke is the most incredible campus. And it's like almost, some people say it's a bit like Hogwarts. And that's kind of the feel you might get at times too.
It is definitely a Hogwarts feel. I've been there, and it's gotten the grand tour, and it's Hogwarts style, no doubt.
Exactly. Minus the freshman dorms that you saw.
Yeah.
Minus those.
We'll go, yeah, because I went to, this is in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I went over, got a grand tour with my good friend Mike Miller, who was the coach at the time, and we'd helped another player there, Torbjørn Alseth, and you mentioned Emil Ekblom at Syracuse that I helped there, and I also helped his brother Øyvind Alseth to Syracuse, and he ended up being drafted, and now he plays in the top flight in Norway. But his brother Torbjørn, I helped him to Duke, so there was another Norwegian there while you were there as well. And then I came to visit him because I was in the area, and I saw his dorm room, and then I met your friend Kieran from Scotland. Mm-hmm. You're in Scotland right now, that you're rooming with. So it's like it's a
small world,
quite a small world with this. But it is though with Norwegians in the college system, I would say. But I got the chance to check out the campus and got the grand tour, and the only minus was the freshman dorms. I thought I would have envisioned those were like big houses with almost like with they come and make your bed in the morning, but it was very much you start here and then you can work your way up in the housing market at the Duke campus.
Exactly. What's so nice also about Duke, and I think really added to the college environment or student environment, is that you have to basically live on campus for 3 years. And so, and if you move off campus, it's pretty close to campus anyway. So for 3 years or 2.5, students have to live on campus. And so people are forced to be around one another. And so that was what I valued a lot. And, I had my freshman dorm, and then sophomore year, I went to the main campus and I lived straight off the chapel there and stuff. It was a very tight knit student environment, which really added to the experience for me.
So Markus, you've played at one of the better, youth teams in Norway for a while, and then you suddenly are on the plane over to North Carolina to play college soccer. Could you tell us a little bit about how it's different from playing in Norway, coming to college soccer, and the sort of the physical part of playing college soccer?
Yeah, I think what's first struck me is the intensity of it. And with that, I mean, in Norway, I think there is, especially through youth teams, there is this idea of keeping the ball, and it's more possession oriented. There was an idea, and especially from Bærum, where I came from, it was a large emphasis on that. And I think I played my first preseason game against Old Dominion, and a good team, and very humid, of course, which adds to it. And I remember, and I played a half because we just split up the teams. And I played first half, and I've never been more tired after a first half ever in football. And it was an intensity of it because it was just back and forth. And, and I think what sets college soccer apart is there is a huge emphasis athleticism too. There are strong players, but also very fast players. And here I come as a 6'3" Norwegian, and I add another maybe 5, 6, 7 kilos later on. But I'm still one of the bigger guys. But I'm still playing at an intensity that I'm not used to because it's entirely different. And often I think people think, and listen, even on the higher level, when people go to another league, say to the Premier League, whatever, for all players involved, it takes a bit of time to adapt to a new league. I thought, oh, wait, football is football. This is the first time I played properly outside in another country. And I thought, you know what, football is football. I'll be fine. Like, I'll apply myself just like I have in Norway. But it takes time to find your footing. And it took me actually a while to do that. And I remember calling my dad and even using one of the sports psychologists that were made available for us. And I said, listen, I can't find like Markus. Like I'm struggling to find my footing here. Maybe I was playing with a bit of stress or, and nerves, but it took me a while. But after maybe 1.5 months, then I started to feel, okay, now I'm myself. Now I'm starting to show what I could do. Because, you should avoid those thoughts of, oh, but I owe these coaches this. They gave me the scholarship. But those thoughts inevitably, they do hit you, and you need to rid yourself of that and find your own rhythm. And thankfully that I found that. But in the beginning, I'll admit it was tough for me to adapt because I thought football is football. But no, when you go to a different country, there's a way of doing things. You need to find yourself settled both on and off the field, and thankfully that worked out. But in the beginning, I'll admit it was tough for me.
You have to do well on the field. You have to be happy off the field, and that's that transition into the style is different and how it's played. You have brand new teammates, a new coach. Takes a bit of time to see the philosophy and how we're supposed to play. That would differ for anyone when you come to a new team. But how was that, like the cultural part of it, where getting into the group, the language, North Carolina versus Europe, very different. But how did you come in the group there?
For me, that went very well. I thought, moving from one country to another, let alone another continent, I thought that would perhaps be an issue, but I found myself integrated in the group pretty fast. I think maybe it helps that, I'm born in England. I've lived in Germany. I've been part of an international school environment for a very long time. So it's an environment I relished in, and I was very much ready to embrace it. So that helped. In terms of purely transitionally speaking, I think the toughest thing was the academics to get used to the academic rigor. That was tough for me, finding the balance, because you are an athlete, but you're also a student, and so you're reading these papers and you're trying to be so obedient and doing all the necessary readings, and you're trying to do that, and then you're trying to figure out, but then I'm also being part of a group and I'm trying to perform well and stuff like that. But I think what football is a great example of is if you're put in an environment like that, you are part of a team immediately, and so you make your friends pretty quick. You're thrown into an environment which is conducive to making relationships, and that's maybe perhaps tougher if you go alone and you are maybe just here to go into the academics and whatnot. You have to seek those social environments yourself. But that's what's the beauty of it. Think of soccer is it allows you to be part of a team and form relationships that way, and that really gave me a good start to my environment or to my college experience, because then you can figure out the rest after.
And you must have hit the ground running fairly fast. You talk about the first maybe 6 weeks, month and a half, but your first year at Duke was outstanding for a freshman. You were a freshman there, but you transferred in with some credits. So in theory, you were a sophomore, but you're a freshman with some credits. But you ended up getting awards, MVP, I think Rookie of the Year, maybe was what you got in your first season. So that is one. Americans love to let people know who's doing well, which is maybe different from what you were used to, but it also must be a good feel good for you to say, okay, well, I've done something right here.
Absolutely. And listen, and on the topic of Americans, like, I think that's an incredible thing, part of the culture. And people might say, oh, that sometimes American culture is a bit superficial when they say, oh, good for you, and they hype you up and stuff like that. I'm like, I'd rather prefer that, to be honest. And we can talk about the Norwegian experience where it's a bit more modest, perhaps. But it's kind of refreshing to go into then in an American environment where there is that emphasis on, oh, good for you, you know, and hyping you up. And they are unapologetic about that. And it was nice for me to end the year like that. Obviously, Duke had made the tournament when we didn't make it that year. We didn't really actually make it until my senior year. But it felt good to get those acknowledgements because, like I said, having started the season, it was tough for me in terms of the mental aspect. But the coaches kept their faith in me, and I played every game. So that's what really helped me through it. I just had to play games and gain that experience, and that worked out itself in the end.
It's always nice to end up with a good season, and the team progressed as you were there, as you got older too, into back to where they're supposed to be, a team that can go deep into the national tournaments. But the ACC, Atlantic Coast Conference, it's a well-known conference. It's probably the best one for soccer. There's so many good teams. On that list, you set up with the Middlesbrough legend Robbie Mustoe, and I mean he's in the US commentating. I think as a pundit on TV there. But a lot of those teams, you talked about Virginia, you talked about Wake Forest. These teams became your opponents in the ACC. What is so special about ACC in your eyes, having played there?
I mean, it's an incredibly competitive environment, and they often then, like you say, because they are the strongest conference, they attract the best players, and so that's pretty special because you have so many good teams within one conference, and that's what I knew as well. Is I came over to gain that experience, and I knew I was testing myself against some of the best teams in the college environment, and listen, that's some quality players, you know, from all over the world coming, including from America. So that was an incredible experience for me. Freshman year, we played UNC, and that's probably one of the memories that really stick to mind. Is we played UNC, and they were number one ranked in the country at the time, and we played them and we beat them 2-1. And I think for some reason there was this incredible interest around the game, and the stadium was filled up. I think it was 3,000-4,000 at the game, and UNC had an entire section on the long side of the stadium filled up as well. And we were down 1-0, and then we won 2-1. And that was the most incredible experience because it was just that's the experience I went there for. And I don't think I've ever played for that many in my entire college time. So we won, and we had Sean Davis, who's captain at New York Red Bulls now. He was our captain then, and he had the most incredible game. But also, it was my freshman class. I think 6 or 7 of us started. So doing that as part of a class together was also incredible. So a lot of great memories. But that one there when we beat the number one UNC is one of my favorite memories from my time at Duke.
The Duke UNC rivalry, that is one of the absolute biggest ones in college. You talk about soccer here, but if you look at basketball, you know, Coach K, he's the legendary basketball coach at Duke, and he led the Dream Team in the Olympics for the US. So, and he's walking around campus, being in that environment. But UNC is how far away is it? Like 20 minutes?
Yeah, if 20 minutes, but yeah, in around that, yeah.
So, and then here we have 2 amazing academic institutions, and all of them with great sports programs, going at it every year. When those derby games come up, regardless of sport, it's a probably electric atmosphere on campus, especially when you win those.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was just felt throughout the whole campus, and obviously with mentioning Coach K, you had the basketball program. And what you got to remember is I come into Duke, and I talked a bit about my kind of naivety or lack of knowledge of Duke and the whole college experience. I knew that Duke was an esteemed school, but I didn't really know much else. So with if when people come to say a school like Duke, they have certain preconceptions of what the school is or what experience you're seeking. I was like, oh, Duke's a good school. That's all I knew. So I came into that experience like as a blank page. So all these things that they said about Duke, it kind of had to prove itself to me. And that's what it really did. I came in and I found the Duke experience to be what people said it was, but I didn't know that at the time. And so Duke UNC is one important part of it, and the basketball program, because I think sports is so important to bring about a student spirit or a school spirit. And that's what the Duke basketball program probably, because you were camping outside for games. You were in line. You had the student section in this tiny little basketball hall that the school doesn't want to get rid of, because they know that they can expand it and tear it down and expand it to 25, 30,000, but they keep it at like 8, 9,000 because that's part of the magic of the Duke basketball experience. And so I've had some incredible experiences, when Duke basketball have played UNC and we've won, and they burn the benches on the court. That's tradition, and there's a big fire going on, and everyone's just going crazy. And that's part of the school experience that I really, really treasured and really added to the overall student experience.
It is incredible because Duke, like you say, they could build a stadium that would take 3 times as many people and it would sell out every single time.
Exactly.
Because when I got the Grand Tour from Coach Miller, and when he was saying, I can probably get you tickets to a game, and I said, really? And like, yeah, I might be able to pull some strings to get some tickets to. It was not a rival game, but still, just to get tickets is like gold dust. Because I came into the arena and it's such a classy and beautiful stadium, but it's small compared to what you would think that a school like Duke would have. But it just adds to the whole experience. And I had left town that day they were playing, so I couldn't accept the generous offer of getting tickets to that game. So I've never seen the actual game, but which is I'll have to come back for that.
You'll have to recruit some more Norwegians to Duke, I reckon.
Yeah, we're working on it. But yeah, no, it's those things are part of. And nobody here would know that. You're coming from internationally into the US to study, and it's impossible for us to understand the traditions. You can read up on stuff, but also you just have to experience it yourself.
Exactly.
And I think and many schools have this. It doesn't have to be a Duke, a world famous school like Duke. At my school, there were different traditions that we had, and it is like that many places. So part of the experience.
It's so much, you're going so much into the unknown, but that's part of the thrill, and that's what I've always liked and what I've pursued after college too. It's all unknown, so you're just figuring it out as you go. And I think for you as well, you're just figuring out and getting to know the school traditions. And after you're done, you look back and it's a part of who you are.
No doubt.
It's an adventure. It's an unwritten adventure that you sort of make out yourself along the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. But how? We won't go into every single season, but it ended up that you logged so many minutes playing an incredible amount of games in your 4 years at Duke, and since you had done a year of university studies in Norway, you came over and you got a lot of credits for those classes you'd done there. So you actually managed to finish up your bachelor's degree in 3 years at Duke instead of the normal 4 years, because you had that year you brought with you from Norway pretty much. And so you could start your master's at Duke as well, that's nice. An undergrad from Duke and then continue with a master's from a school like Duke. Very, very cool. But you talked about, from being a young freshman into becoming a part of a team that was qualified for nationals and did well in your senior year. And the senior year is important for the team to do well, because that's also when you finish, and you had the pro ambitions. And when you deliver in the ACC, you can also play professionally. That's typically it's very good stepping stone for that. But talk us through your final fall season with Duke.
Yeah, no, that was, like you said, it was special, and it was also very important for me. As well as you can perform during freshman, sophomore, junior year, the fact remained we hadn't made the tournament. And if you don't make the tournament, if you don't go for a long run, they'll look at I noticed that when it was award season or team of the season or stuff like that, there was no teams that weren't making the tournament or doing well in the ACC in it. So I could do as well as I wanted to, but I needed to go far. And so going into that senior year, we were a big class when we came in as a freshman, and so we were a big senior class. And listen, there are things you can improve. Like we've talked about keeping a balance between academics, between the sports, between social. Listen, during the season, you cannot satisfy all three. It's impossible. So you have to give up on certain aspects. I said that during that fall season. I said football and academics. Social will have to come in the spring or whenever after. And so the coaches formed a leadership group, 5 of us seniors. What helped is that a lot of us were playing. As college progresses, we were 12 or 13 freshmen. Then for that year, 7 or 8 maybe remained. And then 5 of us maybe started and really prioritized it. And we formed a leadership group. We said, we're not going out this season. We're not, no alcohol, no going to the bars, no going to clubs. We're staying in because we are making this season properly. We need to catch up with the rest of the teams. And they say, yeah, but the other teams do it. I said, yeah, but they can afford it because they made the tournament. We need to do something differently, I said. So we decided on doing that. What ended up happening is we had to throw off like 2 of our teammates off the team after giving them several warnings, and these were good friends of ours, to set an example and say, you're off the team. You cannot, because it's not in line with how we want to do. So we really sacrificed a lot going that senior season. We had myself, we had Brian White, who's now at New York Red Bulls, a good friend of mine, Carter Manley, who he also got drafted that same year. So we had a good group going on. And what ended up happening is that we reaped the rewards. We did really well. We were 5th ranked in the country, and even though we didn't go far in the ACC tournament, we made the NCAA tournament and made it the last 16, where we heartbreakingly lost on penalties after having led 2-1 until the very last minute in regular time. So that one still hurts because we would have met UNC in the final 8 or Elite 8. And we should have won. But it was a good season individually and collectively. And I noticed that in terms of, awards you got at the end of the season and the ranking, you're automatically you're given more attention to. Yeah. And that's what happened then. And so then I came in going into that MLS draft with a bit of momentum.
Yeah. It's good because the spotlight is, of course, on the teams that do well, and you were a team captain at Duke and anchoring the defense for the center back, the big long-haired center back Viking. So you get attention from your performances, and then it's MLS draft time, which is always an exciting time. It's in January. It's after the semester is done. There's a lot going on in the background there. And on draft day, what were your expectations?
Well, I went in, so I was like, okay, I would do this. So I had an agent, he reached out, you know how it is. And he said, oh, he's going to help me, blah, blah. So he was like, okay, I'll because it's people need to push you into it as well. It's part that, but also your own performance. So I went actually to an unofficial combine in Las Vegas in December before I went home. Did that, and then I got to the combine in Orlando early January. Played 3 games, and I thought I did all right. I think I was able to show the player I was. I came in with a lot of confidence, and so I didn't really know what to expect. But during the combine process, teams will invite you into it's kind of weird. Because they invite you to their rooms and say, hey, listen, we would like to have a meeting with you. And the meetings might vary, but you hear like, oh, so that certain player got invited to that guy's hotel room This sounds really creepy at the sound of it, but it's with the whole
It's just
team,
it's a meeting.
their whole coaching staff.
It's like it's like your admissions interview only for MLS.
Exactly, and it varied. And so I remember they gave me the goal at least, so that gave me maybe a bit of attention. But I was invited then by Real Salt Lake and Seattle Sounders. It varied. Seattle Sounders, it was just with the head coach and one more coach. Real Salt Lake, it was they had a camera on and 8 people standing in these high bar stools around. And I said, oh my God, like how formal is this? And it's funny because on the podcast I had the CEO of Barnsley now, who's in the championship. And when I said, I said, I don't know if you remember this, but you were in the room when I was talking to Real Salt Lake, because he was technical director at the time. He said, yeah, I remember you. He's a long-haired center back in the back. I said, yeah, that's great. Anyway, I had those chats and I said, okay, let's see what happens. The draft was in Philadelphia, and I thought, you know what, there's no point me going. I'm in the middle of my master's anyway, so I need to figure this out. But it would be cool if I'm drafted. So I attended, as usual, one of my classes in the business school. I had my finance class and I had my phone in front of me, and I was just looking at the draft. And then they're going through round 1, and I wasn't expecting round 1. I said, oh, maybe round 2, because the first 2 rounds are done live, and the 3 and 4 are done like after. And so I think the second to last pick, 45th pick, Seattle Sounders came up and they said, you drafted Markus Fjørtoft. And I was in class and I was like, oh shit. And I just ran out of class and I said, oh my God. And I was like, and I called my dad and I said, oh, did you see this? And I was happy, very happy for about 30 seconds. But then it went through my mind. I said, oh, how do I figure this out? Like I have school. I'm going to go train with him. I'm going to have to figure that out. And then that all ensued. But in the moment, it was good because that's a goal I had. I had a goal going into college. I said, how cool would it be if I was drafted? And I was drafted second round in Seattle Sounders' second pick. And that was a great affirmation of how I'd perform and the player I was. So I was very proud of that.
Yeah, you should be proud of that. Not many get their name called up. And I would say not many sit in finance class while their name is being read on ESPN. We select Markus Fjørtoft from Duke University. That is one of. I mean, there's several funny stories with where people are when they get drafted, but this one is. It shows you take care of your academics, and when you're at a school like Duke, that's a good testament that's required.
It was an expectation at Duke, but it was very funny at the time. And then I told my professor, and she thought it was very cool and stuff like that.
Did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I got drafted. And she was like, "Wow, so cool."
You didn't raise your hand, Professor. I just got drafted.
No. I just ran out, and I said, "I apologize for running out, but you see, I got drafted."
That's interesting. Awesome. But then for your bachelor's graduation. That is a big moment, regardless which school you're at, and not just for you, but for your family. Did you get your family come over and see you walk the walk and get that diploma, the cap and gown?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's funny is my sister went to University of San Diego, and she graduated actually in May. But unfortunately, because of COVID, she wasn't able to do it. And I always make fun of her because I've had 2. So in 2017, I came in 2014, 2017, I got my bachelor's degree, but it wasn't really with my class. But I still did the whole graduation weekend, which is a lot of fun. And I went down and I got my blah, blah. But then I did it the year after also, because then I got my master's degree, and then it was with my whole class. So my mom and my dad came the first time, and then my mom and my sister came the other. And you're just from Thursday to Sunday, you have all the kind of fun after that. But then through Thursday to Sunday, you're going through all the process, and then you're just celebrating away the end of college. And so I was able to get 2 actually. So it was double the trouble, double the fun.
All right. So master's degree, finance class, being drafted, change of plans. Because you're going on preseason with Seattle Sounders, going to California, going to Arizona. How did you juggle? I mean, it was a pleasant, maybe a surprise, or it was a great thing to be drafted, but you have to change because you were still in school at this point.
Yeah, and I knew that when I applied for my master's, I knew that might be a predicament. But I said, okay, let's take that when that time comes, and then it inevitably happened. And so talked to the school, had a dialogue, and I was a bit stressed because being away from the group like I was, or being away from school in a pretty intensive 1 year period, it requires, I'd have to go off then to preseason camps in San Diego and then Arizona, but I'd go to San Diego or I go to Seattle, then we flew to San Diego, and I bring my schoolwork there, and I said, okay, I'm going to be in San Diego now for 7 to 10 days, and then I finished training there, and then I said to Seattle, I said, okay, now I have to go back to school. So they're like, okay, well, we're going to go to Seattle, be back in Seattle for like 5 days. I said, cool, I'll be back in school for a week. And I had my group because it's very team based, the school, the masters. And then I did a week, and then I went to Arizona, and as how random it is, I was there for 7 to 10 days again, I think, doing schoolwork. And then Seattle signed Ikrem, who's now a captain of Molde, and we ended up being roommates there, and we were training there, and it was Super Bowl, I think, during that time too, and Galaxy were there, so Ula Kamara and Shelvik, they were also there, so they're like, okay, you want to just go and watch the, Ikrem's like, okay, we're gonna watch the Super Bowl in that room, and I'm like, okay, so we were just cracking some Coronas, watching the Super Bowl in the hotel room as 4 Norwegians. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, what is life? And so I did that. We were there for like 7 to 10 days, and then it came to its inevitable conclusion. Almost a combination of, listen, I came in as a foreigner. It's tough. I have to occupy one of the foreign spots. As it looked, they were going to sign another center back. I would have been 4th choice center back, 5th choice, who knows? And so it was tough. Like, they had 1 or 2 spots left, and it kind of fizzled out. There was almost an acknowledgement from both sides that it came to an end almost. And looking back, it was all right, because I saw Ikrem. He got released 6 months later, and he'd been the best player I've ever trained with. I thought he was so good. And I said, wow, like, even him. And he was struggling with injuries and stuff like that. But still, I was thinking, even him, he's getting released. And I was thinking, what if I, best case scenario, had signed for Sounders and stayed on, and then I got released 6 months later, and I'd have to go back for my master's a year later, and the impracticalities that entailed. So I went back to school. I stayed fit. Duke has incredible facilities. I trained a bit with North Carolina FC in the USL twice a week, just to stay fit. And I also got to have a proper college experience as actually just at the time then a student, because that's what it was. And so, at the end of it, it worked out all right. And I think I'm grateful for the way things developed.
Yeah, it's challenging, of course, for the foreign players to get the contracts, because you were at the time in Seattle Sounders. They have many full national team player internationals in their roster, and that's who you're competing against. If you were an American, there's no cap here, so then it would have probably been a shoe-in for you. But you're fighting a little bit that they have these other pieces of the puzzle that affects you, but you can't really plan for that. So
no. Listen, maybe I should have performed better. Maybe that's what it comes out. But that's football. That's how it is. And yeah. I've been around the football environment since I was born because of my dad. So I know the nature of things too.
Oh, exactly. But your name was pulled out of the hat, and it opened up some doors despite not signing for Seattle Sounders. But you finished your master's, great achievement as well. And now you're free to do whatever you want to do. And you end up on another continent.
Yeah, for me, it was a similar conversation I had with myself and my parents as I had before I went to college. I said, what do I want my career to look like? And so after college, I spent a little time in Kansas, actually, where my girlfriend's from, and I was there for a bit, and I was training. And then I'm like, okay, now we have to figure something out. So I went to Millsborough, actually, under 23, and I trained with them for a couple of weeks, or 2-3 weeks. And listen, this is football. And then I said, oh, now you can have a trial with this German team in this Zweite Bundesliga. And I was there for 2 days. I played a game, one training, and said, no, you're not what we're looking for. I said, okay. I went back to Millsborough, trained there for a bit, and then I had a trial, and then said, oh, you want game time? Listen, there is this conference club that's 5th level in England. They're doing like this bounce game. If you want it there, and you can prove yourself there. I said, okay. I haven't played in a while. I'll play that game. They said, okay, you can come back. Like, we'd love to see you. And I'd been in the process of looking at New Zealand and stuff at that point, or other opportunities. And I decided after that, I said, and then again, I asked myself, what's best case scenario here for me? That I end up playing for this, no disrespect, but like for me, this was my preference. I said, for me playing for this conference club, I don't want that. So I said, how do I want to live my life? And I was able to then use football to live the life I wanted to live. And so I was able to say, oh, wow, New Zealand, cool setup, an Irish coach. He was super professional, super thorough. He's like, listen, we don't have much to offer, but we'll offer you, oh, by the sounds of it, I have a lot to offer, but we'll offer you house, we'll offer you car, and then you'll be working within, you can choose what role you want to work within the club. You can work media, marketing. I said, perfect. Again, as college, I can combine something. So I said, okay, then I can work a little media and marketing with the club and their federation, and then I can also play football there. What another great combo! And I can also educate myself at the same time. And that's what happened. And I made some friends for life there as well, and it was an incredible experience.
Yeah,
I have to say that, taking that leap and traveling to New Zealand, you have a very mature way of thinking, Marcus. Actually, looking beyond that, oh, yeah, maybe if I'll do well here, I can get signed by a championship club in England or whatever. But I think you have a very mature way of thinking and doing the research that you've done as well. And then suddenly you find yourself in New Zealand working and playing professionally there. How is that for... have you been the only Norwegian ever to play in the top division in New Zealand?
I think maybe there's been two, and that was me, and then it was Chris Wingate, who I recommended to the club, and who asked me about it also after. And he said, listen, what's up with this club? And I said, listen, if you want 6-7 months to live in an entirely different place of the world, then do it. Like, what's it going to cost you? And that's exactly what I thought. I said, it's not like I'm committing to a 3-year contract here. I said, oh, the season's from September to March. I can live in New Zealand during that time. And what if I don't like it, so be it. But then I've tried it. And that's kind of been my mindset the whole time. And I didn't know much about New Zealand. I just knew it was a small little neighbor of Australia. No disrespect to any Kiwis, but that's all I knew. And so I said, okay, let me just try it. And that's what I did. And football was mixed because of different things. But I had an incredible experience. There was a huge Irish base of players there, a few English people, and I didn't expect to make the relationships I did, especially after college. But that's what I did, and it was another way for me to add to my experience. It was now I can call New Zealand home as well. And I thought, for me, that's of the greatest inspiration. Just like I'm in Scotland too. I'm like, oh, that Scotland's been home, and then I've kind of had an imprint on all these different places of the world, and that's almost part of. That's for me part of the pleasure of doing all this. Just the process of living there and looking back.
Yeah, you have an explorer's mindset. I love it.
Yeah.
It's inspiring. It really is. And now is the time to do it. You're still young, relatively speaking. So you just
speaking, yes.
Yeah, we are still young, all of us here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
why not? I mean, you're not settled down yet. That's the time to experience, and maybe somewhat more difficult at the moment. That hopefully will be more normal again, where people can travel and explore a bit more. But
And also, and going off that, just say people who do the college education, you allow yourself that freedom to do it, because it's not that I have to do this. It's because I want to do this. So, and because I've had that education, I've kind of afforded myself that freedom to do that for a bit of time. And then it's up to me when I say enough's enough. But I feel like I've afforded myself that freedom to pursue something I feel very passionate about right now.
Yeah. And you should.
That's a
We
very
all
good way to put it.
should do it. But you've been in New Zealand. I mean, clearly Lord of the Rings must have inspired you to think New Zealand. And I think anyone who's seen those movies just think, that is on the bucket list to go there.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. It's a beautiful country, and it's similar. Norway, New Zealand, Scotland, they all have a bit of similar. If Scotland had sun every once in a while, that would help. But still, it's all very. It's the similar kind of the similar scenery, and so they're all very beautiful countries to have been in. I was fortunate enough to travel through football, but also just in general in my time off around New Zealand. And it's a beautiful country, such a laid back culture as well, which I really dig.
Yeah, but then you move. It's time to continue your soccer career, and now you're a good player. You end up Scotland and Scottish Premier League. This is a good league. It's
a very good league.
This is proper football again here.
Absolutely. It was weird because after college, I've always been realistic in the sense that when I was at college, I said, that would be cool if I was drafted. And I said, he'll take when it comes. And my dad will even tell you that he came over once and thought like, okay, I'll have a conversation with Marcus now. I say, hey, listen, what are you thinking now after college? And I said plainly, I'm giving this a go. Like, and my dad's always been very supportive, but it was getting close to the end of college and stuff like that. And I said, no, I'm giving this a go. And so he didn't really chime in with anything. He was like, oh, okay, go for it, type of thing. And so I gave myself 2 years after college too. And I said, let's see where this ends up. And I'll give myself 2 years because then I've given it a go a bit. So the spring or the step from New Zealand to Scotland is obviously a very significant one. Thankfully enough, as fate or whatever might have it, I played with, we mentioned that earlier in the podcast, with Kieran McKenna, who was a Scot, and he'd graduated after 3.5 years. He'd signed with Falkirk in the Scottish Championship, and I looked at it and I said, oh, he's playing Scottish Championship, and then I asked myself, why can't I do that? Why can't I try that? Or I know the level I have, I'm able to show, and so I reached out to his dad, who is an agent as well on the side while running his own business. Very, very good guy. And I said, hey, listen, I'd be interested to try like Scotland. Is there anything you could help me out with? And he said, listen, he comes back and he said, I've gotten you a 3-week trial with Hamilton. They said they guarantee you 3 weeks so you can show yourself with Hamilton. I never heard about Hamilton, but they're in the Premiership. I said, wow, that's brilliant. So after New Zealand, I went home for Norway for a week, and then I went to Scotland, and I went on a 3-week trial. And as it turned out, I got offered a contract and for the next season. And it was such a big step, but it was like, wow, now I'm in that was part of the real deal. Like you said, this was British football, and I'd grown up in England. I'd always wanted to be a part of that, and now I had the opportunity to do so. And that was incredible, because then I felt like that was the first time I properly felt like I was a professional football player, because I was in Scotland, I was in the UK playing professionally.
Yeah, but they play in the top division. You play against Celtic, you play against Rangers. I mean, those are the standout clubs for most in Scotland. But there's a lot of good clubs there. But it is quite a step up to come into a top division in any country. And especially in Scotland, where it's the soccer or the football, we shouldn't say soccer, they'll look badly at us for saying that, but the football is so incredibly important in that culture.
Mm-hmm. Listen, it was a big, and another theme, or reoccurring theme, is transitioning to another football culture and another country, similar to when I was at Duke, getting used to that, but now it's an even bigger level up. It's a new culture, it's a new way of playing. And it's almost funny, because the way football is played here, it fulfills almost every stereotype, because it's so physical, and it's all about percentage balls. It's balls in the channel, balls in and around, big headers, and I come in as a 6'4", 210-pound defender. They're expecting, just be nasty. Like, that's your job, right? And so I had to get used to that, and that was an extremely steep learning curve for me. getting used to that, because it was a step up. It was a different way of playing football. And listen, I got a fair amount of, it went up and down my first year, no doubt. But I still was able to. I started against Celtic at home. I started against Rangers away. I made my debut from start at Hearts away, at Tynecastle, 15,000, probably my favorite stadium to play against. The stadiums are like, they're on top of you. And I remember going out then, because I'd made my debut the first league game. Kieran, who started, got injured after 15 minutes. I came in and I thought, well, at least my headers, that's what I've got going for myself. And then I meet the best header of the ball in the league, and I couldn't get a hold of him. And I'm like, oh my God, like, how am I supposed to deal with this? And so it was all new to me. And I went out to Hearts, and I remember the first, it's seldom in life when you get exposed to something that is entirely new to you. But I was going in there, and like I said earlier, I'd play in front of 3,000, Duke and C. That was the most I played against. And then I went up and played Hearts away at Tynecastle, 15,000. And the atmosphere and everything was just so intense. And I remember for the first 5 minutes, I was so nervous. I didn't know what to do, because it was so new to me. My body didn't know how to respond. And then after a while, and then you play Rangers a month or two later, you're playing in front of 55,000. But then you're used to it. Your body gets used, your mind gets used to something pretty quick.
Can you ever be used to playing in front of 55,000 people in Scotland?
Yeah.
I guess you could.
It was incredible. Yeah. Jermaine Defoe playing up top. I was like, wow, like now I'm suddenly here, And so it was such a big transition from where I'd been to then. But then you get used to it with time. But like you said, you need to be exposed to experience. And that's kind of like a chicken and the egg. Where do you start? Well, you need experience to develop, but then you also need to be good enough to get those experiences. And so it's a tight balancing act at that.
Yeah. Playing in front of 55,000 people against Rangers, I don't think I would have adapted that well. I think I would just...
That game was fun for 2 minutes. And then I realized we're not going to touch the ball here. And they scored pretty early. And I said, oh my God. But it was an experience. And I got, that's another part of my inventory. And now I've done that, and I'm used to that almost in a way.
Was Steven Gerrard the manager at that time?
Yeah. He was.
Yeah.
He was.
So you have that also. And Jermaine Defoe on.
Yeah,
That's
that
fun.
was absurd. I was so out because his movement's unreal. So I was thinking, I was so paranoid about his movement, because I knew his movement was so good. He was always trying to get in and around you, and I was like trying to hold him, and I was trying. It's tough, but I'm a better player for it,
Yeah.
I can't stop thinking about the game in 2013 at Kaddetangen, just outside of Oslo, where I'd seen it before, but the transition from being a young junior and a good age group in Bærum to all these different steps that we've been talking about. It's quite incredible for you talking about this journey and how you've grown up, but you've grown up, but you're still exploring. I mean, now you're still in Scotland. You're not with Hamilton any longer. You made a move to another club just outside of Glasgow, in Greenock Morton, and you're still just living life. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I am. And listen, when you get older, you get more selective in terms of opportunities. I came back. I extended my contract by 1 year at Hamilton. I came back really strong, I felt, and I got the chance in the second league game. And then certain things developed where I didn't agree with the decisions being made, and I felt like they were unfair at that. And so I said, I don't know how long my career is going to be, so I need to play. I need exposure. That's what I want to look at. I'm not trying to get super rich at football, but I'm certainly trying to make the most of my experience and develop into the best player I can be. And so I made the move, and it was, I went down to the Scottish Championship, which is, by the way, the craziest league in the world, because it's 10 teams and it's so tight and everyone beats everyone. And if you look at the league table, you'll understand what I mean. But I needed to get that exposure, and I was signed by a coach who I got very much along with, and he gave me opportunities. He unfortunately resigned, but still I was able to get that experience, and now I have a lot of games under my belt in the Scottish Championship, and I notice with every game you're getting more confident. You're a result of your experiences, and that's what I'm getting at now. And I feel like I'm growing into the player I know I can become. And that's my primary motivation, is when I look back at my career, how did I do everything I could? Did I become as good as I possibly could? Because the last thing I want to do is look back with regrets and say, oh, you should have stayed because you would have maybe become a better player. But I think I'll know myself. I'll notice a sense of fulfillment, I think, when I say, oh, you know what, this is how far I've gone. Because as I get older, I need to be more selective. I can confidently state I don't think I'll play until I'm 35, because fortunately enough, I can do other stuff if I want to. And that time will come where I'm like, okay, you know what, I've had such a good ride with football. Now I want to do other stuff. But I don't think I'm quite ready for that yet. But I always say, and it drives my girlfriend kind of mad at times too, I said, just one more year. So it's hard to say.
You're starting on the 1 more year at age 27. It's like it seemed like you're 35 at that point, but no.
Exactly.
Markus, I'm this inspires me, and I think it'll inspire a lot of people. And you're just gone for it, and you have an amazing degree and life experience that anyone, when you get into, when you're done as a professional player, I mean, anyone would be very lucky to get your thoughts and mindset into their working environment. So, but I really appreciate for you taking the time and sharing your story with us and the listeners, and certainly made the most out of your football and also your academics to this point. So thank you very much for
it's been a pleasure.
by.
It's been a pleasure talking to you guys, and I think it's really great what you're doing. And listen, I think I would implore everyone who consider the college experience to do so, because it develops you as a person, as a player, as a student, and I think it's fantastic. So keep up the good work.
Very good, Markus. Thank you so much. Good luck for the rest of the season.
Appreciate that. Thanks.